Me now is legal analyst Ari Goldkind. Ari, let's talk about the verdict. You've had some time to have it sink in. What do you make of it as we look ahead to the bail hearing today? Are you surprised?
I have to say that the more I think about it, the more weird the verdict is, the more shocking it is, the more I think it's really troubling. Not that he was convicted. I've been on with you, Marcia, in the last month saying I think he's probably guilty. I think there's something that happened in that room that these two women didn't bargain for. But it's how the verdict was arrived at. All the things that happened since Thursday in the deadlock, the intervention of the judge, her answers, her dirty looks at the defense lawyer, as things were read back that the defense lawyer had to challenge her on. These are cues that the jury takes. And for anybody who doesn't know what I'm referring to, this is with relation to the 21-year-old complainant that there was a conviction on. I think most people watching this would have thought that there would have been at least a conviction on the 16-year-old, who I called the deer in the headlights. And the 21-year-old's evidence was fraught, in my view, with much more complication and credibility issues than the 16-year-old. And when you have a jury saying, and this is out loud, this is not me, this is them, that they were deadlocked on some counts, I emphasize that, counts plural, on Thursday, and then everything that happened from Thursday over to Sunday leads them to come back and convict on one count and acquit on the other two. It's a very strange verdict that goes back to some pretrial rulings that were concerning. Obviously, you'll hear the word appeal, but for Canadians to know that almost 99.9% of appeals in this area, only in sexual assault for convicted accused, almost always get shot down.
Let's talk about what the jury didn't know. And we're now learning that there are new charges. There's a new charge against Hoggard. He's going to have another trial. Is that right, Ari, coming up in August?
That's right. So there's a charge out of a town called Haileybury in Ontario. He'll go to trial on that. I see no chance on the planet he'll plead guilty. We don't know if yesterday's conviction will change his calculus on that. There's a whole bunch of issues that go into that, let alone legal fees. We don't know what he can and can't afford at this point. But there are a ton of things the jury didn't know. Now, the third complainant to me is not critical to that. Judges instruct and say disabuse your mind of it. It's tough for human beings in a jury to do. And remember, there are human beings in the jury pool. They are not trained legal scholars. So a couple things they didn't know are about other people who had access to grind. They also weren't allowed to have the 21-year-old complainant questioned about the actual sexting that they did. There were some messages that the jury was not allowed to hear evidence about. There are a number of rulings that the jury would never know about. And, you know, one of those rulings, very interestingly, is that, and this won't get talked about much throughout Canada in the next few days, is that the defense said, look, these trials shouldn't be held together with the 16 and the 21-year-old. It'll prejudice Mr. Hoggard. The Crown says, look, there's a calling card, there's similarities. It's so similar, the acts, that you should try them together. Well, here we are talking about a conviction on the 21-year-old, not the 16-year-old. And in my view, and I say this with respect to the jury, because certainly they could convict. As I said, there were some problems with Mr. Hoggard's story, but he testified to both. He's only believed on one, or if he's not believed, the jury believes on the 21-year-old, not the 16-year-old. In my view, there's no chance he would have been convicted on the 21-year-old unless the jury also heard and knew about the 16-year-old. So there are so many things at play here. Now, unfortunately, appeal courts turn a often deaf ear to sex assault convictions by, as I said, accused men. The Supreme Court has shut down about 34 in a row. But it's not the convictions necessarily that trouble me. It's how we arrive at it. And did Mr. Hoggard get the fairest of trials? That's something that has caused me concern since yesterday.
Okay, so Ari, then, in the meantime, the bail hearing is going to be taking place next hour. What do you expect is going to happen? And I think the question on the minds of a lot of our viewers is Jacob Hoggard going to prison?
Jacob Hoggard is going to prison, Marcia. Anybody who hedges that answer to you today is hedging it for reasons I don't understand. He's not only going to prison, he's going to the penitentiary for many years. Judge Roberts will absolutely hammer him when it comes to sentencing. If you just read her face, how she looked at him, how she looked at his defense lawyer when his defense lawyer was doing her job, he's going to the penitentiary. He's going to get hammered. I say in the range of 4 to 7 years would be my prediction. The bail hearing, Marcia, is a bit of a different fish. It's not really a bail hearing today. He's going to have a bail set, perhaps to his wife, I believe to his wife. That's what was being set up overnight, where he'll have a surety in Vancouver, because he is living in Vancouver, where he will be watched by his wife as a babysitter when he goes out. It'll be a house arrest bail, and there'll be an element of cash just for people to understand how bail works. We're looking at his wife right there. I expect her to be the surety. Because he doesn't live in Ontario, there's often a cash component to the bail, which is not usually part of most bails in Canada if you live in the jurisdiction. So nobody should think he's going to jail today to start his sentence. That sentencing hearing won't occur until early to mid-March. The bail hearing today shouldn't take long, and we should know exactly what's happening, I guess, by 10:30 or 11.
Ari Goldkind. Ari, thank you. Appreciate that.